Well, thank you, Chairman Alexander. Thank you to our witnesses for being here as well today. Before I begin, I did want to just say a few words on the ongoing situation in the Gulf and Atlantic coasts and in the wildfires out in the West. You know, as a nation, our hearts continue to be with the families who have lost loved ones and all those whose lives have been upended by Irma and Harvey. And on behalf of many of us, I just want to say we extend our deepest appreciation to the countless first responders and public servants and neighbors and volunteers who have inspired us all through their bravery and self-sacrifice. And I, like everyone, commit to working with all of us to, in the coming weeks and months, to make sure these people have the federal resources and partners they need. And I'm sure all of our committee joins me in saying that. Now, I am eager today to continue our conversation on bipartisan steps we can take to restore certainty to the individual insurance market for patients and families across the country who are worried about being able to afford the care they need next year and beyond. So far, we've had focused, substantive discussions in our first two hearings and in our many conversations off the committee on areas of significant common ground around those goals. And that is due in large part to the members of this committee, so I want to thank all of our colleagues on both sides for their efforts. I would also note, as Chairman Alexander has mentioned, our steps to open up this process to members off the committee. We committed to opening up this process at the very beginning of our talks, and I know I speak for many of us when I say, Mr. Chairman, those morning coffees have been extremely helpful. Now, as I said last week, and I'll repeat today, even if we don't agree exactly on the cause, we do agree on the challenge facing this committee. Families will see higher premiums and fewer options as a result of uncertainty in our healthcare system. We also agree that we need to act very quickly, and everyone here understands we have a very narrow window to do so. Now, last week we heard some valuable recommendations in our conversations. First of all, governors and state insurance commissioners from all corners of our country, Republicans and Democrats, agreed that we need multi-year certainty for out-of-pocket cost reductions. As discussed, many insurers are already making their plans and setting premiums well beyond 2018. So if we want to provide the kind of certainty actually needed to lower costs for patients and families, doing the bare minimum here is simply unacceptable. Secondly, there is consensus that along with guaranteeing out-of-pocket cost reductions, we should consider additional ideas to make health care work better for patients and families. One idea is establishing a reinsurance program to help offset costs associated with covering the sickest enrollees. That is something that has come up consistently throughout our hearings, as have other options. And third, and Democrats have been very focused on this from the start, there's agreement the damage being done by this administration on open enrollment and consumer outreach is having a real impact and could potentially undermine our efforts to restore stability toward the markets. And like my colleagues, I strongly believe we need to address that issue. Of course, those are just a few examples, and there are many more areas where we have seen agreement. And today's hearing on specific steps we can take to provide some flexibility to states and communities is an important discussion. Now, I have to say, among the many measures cited as pressing priorities by our witnesses so far, state flexibility isn't something they've said they absolutely need to stabilize the market in the short term. And while we've heard a lot of interesting proposals, I do worry that many suggestions could wind up increasing out-of-pocket costs for patients and families when our principal goal in these hearings and in our bipartisan negotiations is making care more affordable, not less. So I commit on my end, and I know my Democratic colleagues do as well, to seriously listening and considering the ideas presented here today. But I hope we can stay focused on the common goal of lowering costs for patients by stabilizing our markets as soon as possible. And let me underscore what I've said many times. This has to be a conversation about moving forward, not backward, when it comes to affordability, coverage, and quality of care. And I want to emphasize that because Democrats will reject any effort to this discussion if it erodes the guardrails and protections that so many patients and families rely on. This is going to be a difficult needle to thread, I admit, but it is clearly possible. As we know, Governors Kasich and Hickenlooper, in consultation with nearly 20 other governors nationwide, put forth a market stabilization plan which maintained protections in current law for patients like those with pre-existing conditions and women seeking maternity care. So let me be clear, like any worthwhile compromise, I know we will not agree on everything at the outset, but if we can keep today's discussion focused, work through these issues in a specific and balanced manner while keeping our larger goals in mind, I do believe we can get a result, as Chairman Alexander would say. Now, lastly, I have to admit, I do just want to say publicly, I'm disappointed there are still some senators trying to push us down a partisan path on health care. Again, Republicans and Democrats are finally working together here, and it is refreshing and needed, and we've made critical progress. So it would be deeply disappointing if another partisan debate over Trump care erupted and derailed our efforts here. I hope those senators will join these bipartisan conversations instead of doubling down on harmful repeal efforts again that people across the country have rejected. And with that, I want to say, Mr. Chairman, again, how much I appreciate all your work on this, everybody participating, and I look forward to today's discussion.